Lance Hall here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. Happy to welcome David Ellefson, bass player for Megadeth, to the program today. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you.
Good to have you here. You have so much going on and are involved in so many things. I don't even know where to start, Dave, but let's start with the email that started this all with a single release of a Post Malone song that you have covered with your solo band, Ellefson, debut album coming out in October. Tell us a little bit about all this.
Yeah, well, the idea came for it when we were driving around in Italy back in November. Tom had mentioned, just randomly, we just said, hey, what do you think about covering Over Now by Post Malone? And I of course, know of Post Malone song, mostly because my daughter and my wife listen to it all the time around the house. And so I'm pretty familiar with that record of his, and Tom and I have become friends with Post over the last, year and a half or so, and he's a big Megadeth fan and metal fan, and he's just really a fan of music, and so I love the tune, and it's actually perfect for Tom's voice. It sits right in a nice pocket for him, and it was fun to do. I mean, it's funny when you take a song like that and you kind of go, geez, I wonder what other songs we could whip up. Maybe there's like an Ariana Grande or a frickin', I don't know. Maybe there's an Eminem song you could metal out too. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Just what I think what's fun about it is you just realize that lots of times people take heavy songs and they turn them into ballads. Usually it doesn't go the other way. And so this was fun to take it and make it be a really cool, hard rock metal track.
Yeah. A little bit of a hard rock connection there, too, because Tommy Lee co-wrote with Post on that one, correct?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool. I did not know that until, we were looking at all the lyrics and credits and everything, and we saw that, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah. And you also got one Ron Bumblefoot Thal to contribute backing vocals on this, correct?
Yeah, we tap Ron to a lot of stuff. We'll have him play sometimes some little backing guitar stuff, and especially we tap him for a lot of vocal stuff. And, because lots of times on records there's when you're producing a record, it's just that. It's a production, So there's more than just, handful of guys in the band. There's oftentimes some string things, some extra little, just little production things that are done. And having vocals, sweetening up the vocals is really, we all do it. Megadeth, we do it. We've been doing it since we made records with Dan Huff back in the late 90s in Nashville, So you kind of pick up these tricks along the way that you can use that really sweeten up the sound of a record. And Ron is just an incredible, great musician. We know him most as a guitar player, but I was the singer of Asia.
Yeah.
So he's a fantastic singer and just a musicologist. The guy can play anything and everything. So it's the limit of his musical knowledge, and I think that's a big part of it when you're asking someone to come in and play on something, is that they've got this really deep background of their scope of music, so that they can add different things, maybe things that we didn't think about as we were laying the track down with our initial intent. And Ron is one of those guys who just brings things out of left field, and you just like, whoa, never even saw that coming. That is cool.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of interviewing him a number of years ago, and I can give you a little tidbit. I'm not sure if you know this. He's talking about the depth of his music knowledge and everything. Did you know that his parents babysat Barry Manilow when Manilow was a toddler?
I don't remember that. I've spent a lot of time with Ron because we did a bass story together, toured with me and Frank Bello. And he's got some great stories, and we just, like we all do, we just sit around and tell people sitting by the campfire as you're driving around the country. That's one, I don't think I've ever heard that one. That's a good one.
I asked him about it, and he's like, how did you find that out? And I'm like, I do my research, Ron,
Well, see, apparently that's one that he doesn't want public knowledge.
And he's worked with a ton of artists. I asked him, have you ever done anything with him? He said no, but he would welcome the opportunity, So
funny enough, Barry Manilow, we had a tour manager many years ago, I think on So Far So Good So What. We had a guy who had worked with him and said he was a really cool guy. I think as funny as light as his music is, and it's kind of easy to make fun of that genre because at the time it was, it's the music your mom would listen to.
Sure.
But at the same time, as I got to know Al Petrelli when he played in Megadeth, he was in a whole other world of musicians around New York City. Michael Bolton, who was a jingle singer, who then became, an artist in his own right. Barry Manilow, of course, was also a jingle writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my brother had a live album of Barry Manilow when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and he did this whole medley that was all of these, as I just knew him as commercials from TV, but it turns out he was a jingle writer.
Right, all his jingles. It was called A Very Strange Medley. I had that same album.
Did you? Yeah. Right? So, and then, you get a little older and you work in the business and, you start to widen your scope. You're not just like, Iron Maiden or Die,
Right.
You widen your scope if you have to, especially as a professional musician. And then you start to, to kind of get to know some of this stuff and you're just kind of like, God, that is a skill. Al actually had me come in and play on a Heineken commercial because his wife at the time, Jane, she was a jingle writer, and so she worked at a studio down kind of in the village, I guess, and very competitive. I learned a lot about the jingle writing thing, and that it's so basically the ad agency drops off a reel, and you got to basically write a song to it by the end of the day, and then the ad agency comes by, collects all of them, and they pick the best one, and that one, gets the cut. And if it gets used regionally, it's a certain amount of money. If it gets used nationally, it's huge money. If you do a Burger King or a Ford commercial or a Chevrolet or something, so it's just, there's just so many different sides to music. Obviously, the stuff I do is, the stuff you can be famous for. But there's some musicians that are beyond parallel that don't, they're not famous, but they can make a really good living, and they are incredibly talented musicians.
Sort of a modern day wrecking crew, if you will,
Yeah, it is. It's funny because Carol Kay is one of my favorite bass players. She always was since I was a kid. I had books of hers, and I liked her because. Funny, she plays with a pick, which just goes to show when you record in the studio, you use whatever it takes to do that. But she, and I often found when you're recording, because there's always this pick versus fingers bass knob thing, and of course, guys like Steve Harris and Geddy Lee who just have these incredible jobs. Really, Steve. I mean, Steve's, I don't know, he's got like a third finger growing out there somewhere. That the way he plays, he's just a freak of nature with his speed But those are the that is not the norm, and when you get in the studio and you put things under a microphone and you put it up against the drums, now all of a sudden you're not just recording for your own personal preference. Now it's like what's going to sound best. In fact, I just cut a track today for somebody. It was a cover song for my friend Andy over in Italy, and the drummer did an incredible job. It's a Deep Purple song actually, and he did an incredible job really mirroring the Ian Pace feel, because Ian's just got this incredible feel to swing against the snare drum.
Yeah.
And, I for tone purposes, I usually go for a pick, and I just realized, man, this one requires fingers. And Roger Glover, the Deep Purple is not a finger player. He's a pick player. But Roger's also a producer, so, when I was playing, I was like, this is one of these where it's got to be fingers. And it was just such a fun moment this morning. It's like, as I was drinking coffee, I hadn't even had my first cup of coffee yet, and I'm already throwing a bass part down. And, but that's the fun of the world we live in now, as people send, I've got a handful of songs sitting here that I've got to, in fact, when we get off this call, I'm going to record another one.
There you go.
one from my own album, but it's great. It's nice to have work in the queue,
Yeah. How far along is the Ellefson album that's going to be coming out in October?
It's pretty good shape, we had those two songs. We had Over Now, and then the other song, Simple Truth, which is an original song that we dropped back in April. We did those at the same time, pretty much, and back in December, and we spent the last, early in the year just kind of finishing, getting Ron involved on the singing and mixing and all that kind of stuff. But this record, it's all written, and it's the basic tracks are mostly recorded. I've got some bass work on it that I've still got to do, and so I'll be working on that. Tom's got some lyric writing and some singing stuff to do. So there's a lot to do yet, but at least it's written, so we know what it is. Now it's just kind of like now it's sort of, grabbing your crayons and coloring in the framework of the drawing.
And you're such a busy fellow. I was trying to list off, just some of the stuff you've got happening here. You've got Ellefson Music Productions, EMP, the label, you're an author, you're doing movies, you have coffee, EMP management, the bastery thing. How do you balance it all?
I think, I don't know, man. First of all, I've been sober 30 years. I think that's a big part of it. For many years, of course, I was pretty much solely just dedicated exclusively to Megadeth, and as big as we were and are, and the popularity of the band, there's this part of you, at least for me, especially when I got married and started a family and had young kids. Now all of a sudden you're in a much different mindset. You're probably thinking more like most dads, going, okay, job security, I got kids to put through school and college and pay for a house, and, just kind of real life shows up at that moment,
Yeah.
You're not just out rocking the nations for your own fun anymore. And, that was it was very insecure, especially being in a rock band. Megadeth is it's a dangerous, real rock band, with all of its frailties and its fireworks and all that it is. And, the fact that it's combustible and it's this frickin', this roaring engine that could just blow at any time, that's part of the charm of it, that's what's attracted to it, right. I think, for us in the band, as well as the music and the listeners, and it's that punk rock thing that it could just go off the rails at any time, and it has a few times.
Yeah.
But with a great rock and roll band, also, again, it's kind of like the lottery. You're either going to hit big or go bust. And I think there's probably a time back in the 2000s when the group had actually disbanded in 2002. But that was the moment I was like, okay, now I gotta start to sort of, make life more like a mutual fund. You know what I mean? Where I can be a little risky over here, but I got to have some things that are stable over here. And I think that just started a different journey for me. And I finished my college degree, which I only had to actually put it. I only had to put in a resume. It wasn't in a resume. Just I went in. I did a year of theology studies at Concordia Seminary back in St. Louis, and you had to have had a bachelor's a minimum requirement to get into that. So it was nice. I actually have one of those. So I could go continue to do some higher education, which was nice. I've got like lawyer friends that they'll teach once a week at ASU, the state college here in town. And a lot of professionals do that. They'll go teach and they'll do these things, and it's just kind of a way to give back, and it's cool. I like that, and I guess that's probably what we started doing with the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation. Is that's probably maybe my version of that, where I was able to start a foundation that a nonprofit, and have it be something that could raise money to do good things for other people.
Yeah.
And so it just, I don't know. I think it's I've always said, GOD, good orderly direction.
Yeah. And
you just try as best you can to just try to do the right things and try not to do the wrong things. And, we kind of intuitively know inside our gut what those are. Some are obvious, some not so obvious, but, we try to follow that sort of the path. And, it's funny how just, an email shows up, a phone call comes in and says, hey, do you want to do this? And hey, do you want to be part of that? And I just learned years ago from Al Petrelli, ironically, we were talking about him a minute ago, he just said, he goes, just say yes, and he said, you'll get a little overbooked once in a while, but better to be overbooked than underbooked.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than the phone. And I learned that because I said no to a couple of things, and boy, the phone stopped ringing immediately. And then someone told me, they said, David, they're calling you because they want you to say yes. They didn't call you to hear you say no.
Right.
And if you say no, they just assume you're too busy and you're not available, so they stop calling you and they start calling someone else. And I said, ooh, yeah, that kind of sucks. So, I think at this point in life, it's nice, obviously, to be a member of Megadeth, but also to, that has brought much value to a lot of things, and it's also opened the doors to a lot of opportunity. And the only one who can or cannot walk through that door is me. So I just figured, hell with it. I'm opening the door and I'm walking in. Let's go.
And even back in the earliest days of when you first started music, you were always the guy who kind of did it all. You did, the booking, you made the flyers, you loaded the truck, with everything. And even in the early days of Megadeth, when you met Dave, you guys were, chief cook and bottle washers of the band, and that type of work ethic, I think, comes from, you and I are both from the same generation. You were born in November of 64. I was December of 64. And I think that was sort of instilled in us, from that generation, from our parents and stuff as well, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. And I grew up on a farm, so I mean, believe me, that crop wasn't going to plant itself, Yeah. There was preparation of the soil, there was preparation of that. And believe me, I didn't get to drive the tractor across the field and plant the seed in the cushy $100,000 John Deere. That was tractor. That wasn't my job. My job was with my high school buddies and band buddies out picking rock and pulling weeds and doing all the really low level jobs. But that's there's a if you can't be trusted with a little, you'll never be trusted with a lot.
Right.
And it's sort of you're always kind of given the little bits that you want, and you kind of see it in the current generation. Like a boss. You see people putting that on the internet. It's like, dude, you don't get to be the boss until you've earned being the boss.
Mm-hmm.
And when you grow up, learning all the aspects of a business, and then being the boss ain't all it's cracked up to be either. The boss just means that he's had to take more lumps and be beat up more than anyone else. That's really what the boss is.
Yes.
Everybody looks at the boss like, oh, he gets to drive the nice car and make all the money, and it's like, well, behind the boss, there's often, because I am the boss of quite a few things, and the truth of it is there's you also have all the liability, you've got all of the responsibility, and sometimes the most key and critical decisions that have to be made fall on you. And and I find, look, no man is an island unto himself either, and having a team is important.
Absolutely.
To have a team of people, and that's what we have in all the label, the coffee company, foundation, all this stuff. I mean, there's a team of people, and we have trusted advisors, and it's, as much as I'm the famous guy out front, believe me, the team gets every bit as much credit as I do. In the same way, quite honestly, my parents really should get all the credit for all the good stuff I've got going, because they raised me well. I didn't always listen, but they raised me well. They just definitely did their part.
Didn't we all along the way? I've always likened a boss to being a diaper. You're either on somebody's butt or full of crap all the time. Those are the two things you're always getting.
That's a good one.
The other thing I liked was your analogy of fear, false evidence appearing real. And man, is that a sign of the times right now? Where'd you come up with that?
Well, there's another one, F everything and run, right?
Yeah.
If I can swear on here, so I won't, but, so that's another one, the thing about fear, again, growing up in a, faith-based community and being sober and, being around that community, that, these little kind of kernels of wisdom, they come in abundance, believe me.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of just witty sort of, acronyms and analogies of things. And the other one I heard, too, is, ego, EGO, edging God out. As soon as I edge out any source of a greater deity or a creator who created me, suddenly that's when the trouble begins. It's like, hey, I'm the boss.
Right.
That can be a scary place,
Yeah.
So, I think there's my belief is that there's a divine order to things, and when I wake up in the morning, my job is to just sort of, get in touch with the Creator, check in with Him, because He is the boss, check in with Him, and just ask Him, where to today, boss? What do you want me to do today? To further your kingdom. And, again, we're all blessed with unique skills and abilities and talents, and I think, the one thing I will say is that I just, when I fell in love with playing bass at age 11, I just followed that path, and that's all I did. And I remember one time I was watching, it was with my family, and there's another family friend there, and there's some country country band playing in like the local armory in Jackson, Minnesota. Right?
Yeah.
It was like a dance, and people were drinking, and I was young. I wasn't drinking then, and I remember the one neighbor guy said, you can be down there making $50 right now playing the bass. And I just said, and I hated country music, so I'm like, I'd rather play rock and roll for free than get paid $50 to play music I don't like. You know? And that was really what my heart told me. It's just like, you've got to stay true to who you are and what you are and listen to that voice. And, it's ironic, 37 years ago, like this week, I graduated high school in 1983, and literally 5 days later, everything was packed in my van, and me and 3 buddies, we headed from Minnesota out to Hollywood. First by June 1 or something, we landed at our apartment there on Sycamore Avenue in Hollywood. And a couple of days later, met Dave Spain, and we started Megadeth. I mean, it's literally, we're at the downbeat of the formation of Megadeth 37 years ago, and it's amazing that it's been going this long, and that's, Dave's the same way, there's just sort of a relentless pursuit, never give up, just keep going.
Definitely. I was fascinated too with some of your books, and you put out a book of lyrics. You had a bunch of lyric stuff sitting around. Do you consider yourself a bass player who writes or a writer who plays bass?
Good question, and a little of both. There are days. It's funny, I just found that book because I was cleaning my office this last week, and I literally just found that book. My son was just asking me about it, and I said, "Man, I have no idea. I know I have one copy here," and I found it, and I was looking through it, and it was fun to revisit some of those lyrics. Some of them are actual poems. Others were lyrics, and I think the differentiation is a poem oftentimes can sort of stand on its own with its own sort of meter and almost built-in melody to it when you read it, whereas a lyric is designed to fit inside and around music.
Yeah.
And that's what always makes lyric writing a little more challenging, is that you've got this thing you want to say or this story you want to tell, and you've got a certain meter, and you've got so many lines you can sing that work within the music. It has to be comprehensible to the listener as well as singable from the singer. And rhyme scheme or not, it has to also be musical, so that book is interesting because to set those lyrics and poems to photographs was a very different approach. And it was a good friend of mine, Brent. He's actually a doctor, and he's written a book kind of similar to that. And he introduced me to Raffaella, the photographer who lives over in Turin, Italy. And she's just got these great images, these fantastic photo images, and we sifted through a bunch of different. I sent her the lyrics, and she would find photos, and we'd agree upon them and put them there. And I just thought it was cool because it was sort of like reading a story. But instead of engaging your ears, you engaged your eyes to put a picture that would match the thought of the lyric of the poem.
Cool. Good stuff. Chatting with Dave Ellefson here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. We're looking for the Ellefson debut album coming out in October. You can check out their cover of the Post Malone song Over Now. It's out on YouTube. Dave, I always like to end my interviews with just some fun questions. I'm hoping maybe these are questions you've never been asked.
Okay.
Before I get to that, though, I got to ask you one thing. I want to try and jog your memory. I want to make sure I've got this right, too. I can remember a buddy of mine, I think this was spring of 92, telling me, Lance, we got to go to the show over. I live in Vermont. We got to go to the show over in Burlington. It's Megadeth with Pantera opening. Do you have any memories of that?
1992.
Yeah.
I remember it would have been Countdown to Extinction for us, Vulgar Display of Power for them.
Yeah.
And I don't remember much more than that. It's interesting. Nick Menza, former drummer of Megadeth, God rest his soul, I think passed away 6 years ago today, I believe.
Wow.
I just saw something that was online, or maybe it was 4 years ago, 2016 to me, 4 years ago it was actually. And his manager has been putting out some really cool documentary. It was all footage filmed on Nick's handheld video camera. He always loved filming stuff.
Yeah.
Nick was a really creative guy, and he's been putting out some stuff. In fact, actually, a couple weeks ago, he just put something up that was Megadeth and Pantera on tour in Europe, and some footage of them, and it was so fun to just watch that the young Pantera, which is the Pantera I knew. You know, just coming out of the clubs of Dallas. I knew them when they were on the Power Metal album, and they were still playing actually the clubs of Dallas and Texas, and then to see them turn into this band was just so ferocious and changed their sound. You know, they went from this kind of Van Halen meets Metallica thing to the full kind of hardcore. I mean, Phil really, he really, I think, identified the hardcore metal look and sound as a singer, and they were just crushing it, man. And I remember we brought him from Europe, and then we had him do some dates over here with us in. I forgot, was it 92 or was it 93? Maybe it was 93. Was White Zombie on the bill?
I can't remember now. Maybe, it could have been 93 as well,
Yeah, could have been 93, yeah. White Zombie would have been on the bill if it was.
Wow.
If it was,
Okay. All right, fun questions. We were talking about your parents. If you could go back to the days of your youth and have your mom cook one of her meals from then, what would you have her make?
Absolutely. She made an amazing tater tot hot dish.
Okay.
A staple of Minnesota casserole.
All right. Given your choice of household chores, dishes or the laundry?
Gosh. When I was a kid, probably the dishes, because we just got a dishwasher, which was this brand new invention that did the dishes for you. Now I'm pretty good with laundry.
Okay.
My laundry, of course, is better than someone else's, but whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. If you could pick a television show to have one of your songs appear in as like a background on a scene or something, what show would you pick?
God, the one show that I just fell in love with recently was Mad Men. I mean, I'd love to have something on Mad Men. That was so cool.
There you go.
Current TV shows, I really don't watch much TV, to be honest with you. I kind of binge watch Netflix, so I think we're going to have to go with Mad Men.
Yeah. All right. Being from Minnesota, I think this is going to be a fun one. Favorite old school wrestler?
Oh, man. God, I know. I used to watch it on Channel 5 KTSB out of Minneapolis.
Yeah, back in the AWA days.
Gosh. Oh, man, you stumped me on that one. I can't think of one. It's so funny because we actually wrote a song for Goldberg, the song "Crushing" that's on the Risk album.
That's right.
We wrote that specifically for him to use as his walkout song when he was with the WCW.
That's right. Did you ever get to meet him?
Maybe not. Oh, yeah. In fact, they invited us down to play at an event at the Georgia Dome.
Wow.
And they actually played the song. Yeah, it was great. So, it's not super old school, but he would be my wrestler.
All right, yeah. Very good. Very cool. Other than one of your own songs, what is the last piece of music you listened to?
Probably that Deep Purple song this morning that I played bass to.
There you go. All right. Favorite toy growing up as a child?
Oh, I got this really cool battery-operated robot at Christmas.
Okay.
And it was just the coolest thing, yeah.
Excellent. Last one, and this is the one we have the most fun with. If they were to make a movie of your life, what actor would you have portray you in the movie? And it's your movie, your life. You can pick anybody.
Because of the nose, I'd probably have to have Owen Wilson do it.
Okay. I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go full circle back into music, say you have a young person come up to you, a young lady, a young gentleman come up, Mr. Ellefson, and I'm sure you've probably heard this with the Youth Foundation. When I grow up, I really want to get into music and be a musician and make a career out of it. What advice would you, or should I say, do you give them?
I say, first thing I ask them, how long have they been playing? Because that's a deciding factor. Of what I'm going to say to them next. If they're brand new in the beginning, I say go get some lessons. Make sure you take some lessons. Learn how to play your instrument properly, and also learn how to play music. Don't just learn your instrument. Learn the language of music. If they've been playing for a little while, I always encourage them to go play with other musicians. Just have that interactive moment. Learn to play with other drummers, guitar players, piano players, singers. Learn how to be that dynamic inside of an ensemble.
Yeah. Good answer. Sound advice. We look forward to hearing the Ellefson album when it comes out in October. Good luck going forward with everything, Dave, and I thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with me today. Once again, Lance Hall for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall, chatting with David Ellefson here today. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege.
You're welcome, Lance.
Take care.